This is WWP Weekly Wrestling Podcast.
In a few moments, I'm going to be joined by current 2CW and IWC heavyweight champion, former ECW world and tag team champion, former 14-time WWE hardcore champion, amongst many other accomplishments. He is the innovator of violence, Mr. Tommy Dreamer. How's it going, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. Again, thank you very much for the time. It is much appreciated.
No problem. I'm sorry to say it, but I recently lost my 2CW heavyweight title.
Oh, you did? I apologize.
It's all right. I was trying to become like the Ken Shamrock of independent wrestling and capture everyone's heavyweight title, but I recently lost it. I don't know where. At some rock fest.
Okay. Coming up next weekend, the House of Hardcore 9 event in Toronto. Talk a little bit about wearing that promoter's cap as it pertains to wearing the wrestler's cap.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's also very stressful, but it's kind of been something I've been doing since the original ECW and, helping run the shows, book out the shows. Back then, the only thing that wasn't my money up front, same with, writing shows for WWE or writing shows for TNA. It was never my money. Now with, House of Hardcore coming up, as a promoter, I want to say, I guess the easiest way to think about it is everything costs money. And as the wrestler and the wrestling fan and myself, when someone goes through a table, I'd be like, oh, that is awesome. And then as the promoter, I'd be like, that was $115. I love it because the shows have been really, really great. And for basically having 8 shows under our belt and, being on television with the Fight Network and also turning down other TV deals is really, really a great place to be.
That's fantastic to hear. Coming up with House of Hardcore 9 in Toronto next weekend, July the 18th at the Ted Reeve Arena. It's probably one of your biggest cards to date. As main eventing the card, you have the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, probably the hottest commodity in independent wrestling right now, taking on one of the most decorated tag teams in professional wrestling history in Team 3D, Bully Ray and Devon.
Yep. I've had them versus the Hardy Boys, which was a phenomenal match. I've had them versus the Dirty Heels, which was a phenomenal match. I love watching them perform. I'm a big fan of tag team wrestling. And, when I when you talk about being a promoter, it's also what would you think the fans would pay to see? And, I remember growing up, I would always talk about dream matches, and most dream matches always took place when guys were either on the tail end of their career or they weren't, in their primes. But I've been fortunate enough to have, the Hardys when they worked with the Young Bucks. It was, to me, like the Hardys of the early 90s, and with the Dirty Heels versus the Young Bucks was amazing. And, same when Daniels and Kazarian wrestled them at House of Hardcore, I want to say it was 5 in California. They always put on one hell of a show. And to be able to, Bully Ray and Devon can still do it in the ring, and I think it's, one of those matches that the fans, may never get to see ever again. And it's, it will be, it's cool because I know for myself, 44 years old, and when I get in a ring with a guy who pushes me to the next level, I like that. And I like, watching.
You talk about
guys do that.
You talk about somebody who's going to push you to the next level. You're facing one knockout artist, Chris Hero.
Yep. Chris and I have wrestled once before, and I was a fan of his. I've known him, and probably since he started. He was a huge ECW fan. I remember the first time he started, he wore these long yellow pants and a Superman T-shirt, and he was a skinny, tall kid. And, he's become an amazing wrestler. I had booked him on a few of my shows before. Him and AJ Styles was an amazing match. And there's, again, somebody who has taken me to the next level. It's him, and I really look forward to that type of match. Exactly what you said, a stiff, knockdown, drag-out match.
Oh, absolutely. You talk about tag team wrestling as well. A team that can definitely still go in the addiction. Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian taking on the Kingdom and Michael Bennett and Matt Taven.
Yep. They were the Ring of Honor champions versus the New Japan champions. They just lost the titles in New Japan, the Kingdom, Saturday? And but that's okay. The titles were never on the line, but it was, two tag teams that are on top of the world are going to be facing each other. And, again, it's those dream matchups that, to me as a, fan, hey, I know I'd want to see this match. So, it's cool that guys, all the stars aligned and guys were open, and Ring of Honor allowed me to use their guys, and, it is what it is.
Absolutely. You have Rhino in for an open challenge, and a lot of speculation as to who's going to answer that open challenge.
What is the speculation? What's the word on the street? You're from Toronto. I'm not.
I've heard a lot of speculation, actually, regarding a television star, one Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys.
Oh, really?
That's what I've been hearing.
I don't know if that can physically happen because one of the Trailer Park Boys, everyone says, looks like me. So I don't think we got to keep our identities secret because it is me, Julian. So keep our
never seen you two at the same place at the same time.
Exactly. So it definitely can't be him.
All right.
But no, that's also for me, wrestling fan, wrestling promoter. Rhino's an amazing talent. I've known him for years. Before I was actually booking Chris Hero, I was thinking of doing me versus Rhino because that match is always good as well as always real snug. And it usually winds up either him going through a table or me going through a table. But and then when I love and I feel so do wrestling fans that mystery element, which House of Hardcore has been famous for, of, as a promoter wise, not smart to do.
I was going to say, you book surprises a lot where most people would want to promote those surprises that they're bringing in.
And now it's becoming part of the thing like, oh, who's going to be into the surprise? So I think it's after, this will be my ninth show, it's kind of working out that the guy who is accepting that challenge will be a nice addition to the show, and we'll have people definitely come.
And then the final match announced thus far, John Morrison, John Hennigan, Johnny Mundo, whichever you prefer to call him, taking on Tony Nese.
Yep. Again, Tony Nese doesn't have a national name. He was in TNA for a little bit, but he's been on all my shows. I personally love watching him perform. And when I was able to sign John Morrison to the show, I said, I thought about it, and said, man, this is going to be a great matchup. And then I didn't even know it was the first time ever, which was cool.
That's always good. And if you guys want to be there in person, that is at the Ted Reeve Arena, July the 18th, houseofhardcore.net or at House of Hardcore on Twitter for more information on the promotion. Really, really good stuff you got going with House of Hardcore, Tommy.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, again, it came out of, like yourself, you got a podcast. Social media has changed the face of professional wrestling. The fans have basically voiced their displeasure for what they were getting on television. It really culminated at last year's WrestleMania, where, if you think about it, social media really did change the main event of WrestleMania. And, I've been now doing this, the first show was in 2012, and I've always thought differently. I've always, what my slogan says, no politics, no BS, just wrestling. And that's really what I wanted to give the fans. The wrestling business is the best, and sitting back and just being a fan and spending belief for a little bit and just going on some of my greatest memories of my own life have been at a wrestling show, and I want the fans to experience that and experience core memories that'll last them for the rest of their lives. And that's what I've been doing, and as well as, an important part to me, I did it for a lot of people. Being a promoter is always sticking to your word, and I've stuck to my word. I will never, ever tag with Terry Funk again. I will never have Beulah walk me to the ring again. And, we're able to say goodbye to people who the wrestling fans love. And I say this not only to the wrestling fans, not only do wrestlers need closure, but so do wrestling fans. And, Toronto's own Tracy Brooks is going to say goodbye. And, she's pretty much been out of the business. She's happy being a mom and everything. But, she saw what I did for Beulah, and she's like, we were joking around. I said, what, one day I'll do it. And then the Toronto show happened, and I was like, hey, you want to do it one more time and say goodbye to your hometown? And she was like, I would love to. So, to me, it's great for many, many reasons, and especially if you ever cheered for someone or booed for someone, it's a final way to, tip your hat for a great career. I cannot stand when people either get fired from a company or just, their contracts expire, and, people will be like, hey, I heard you're retired. It's like, no, I haven't retired. I know myself. I'm starting today, which I don't know when you're airing this podcast, but I'm on the road till August 4th straight, working every single day. And, it's my schedule.
I actually just saw the tweet that you put out that it was hard to leave your daughters this morning.
Yep. And I know even when, talking with Rob Van Dam about it, people just think you disappear, and no, you don't. There's life after WWE. There's life on the indies, and for me, there's been tons of life for House of Hardcore, and this show we're taking it to the next level. But it's also paid out for me already because all my costs are covered, and it's our largest advance we've ever had, and we're gonna rock Toronto, and I'm really, really happy to be showing my product. And also I had the Fight Network behind me, which is a Canadian-based company, and they gave me television to help promote my event. And it's been a great, great experience, and I really look forward to it, and I'm really looking forward to the show, and letting the world see what I feel professional wrestling is.
I can tell you firsthand, I'm personally looking forward to it, as well as the WWE crew will be front row for the event. Really, really excited for it. As a fan of House of Hardcore, I'd always want House of Hardcore to come up to Toronto. Now that it has, where are some other cities you want to stop on the way?
As long as the company progresses, I would like to go as many places as possible. Again, you touched on it. Hell, I'd love to, as a fan, I'd love to take it to all, for me, the old ECW stomping grounds, and then move it forward to other places. When we went to San Diego, it was a great opportunity for me. And then it was, wow, I always knew San Diego was a great wrestling town. I'd love to personally go to Dallas, but with WrestleMania being there this year, it's, promoter side. Maybe I'll stay away from Texas until, a year later because of WWE's coming in. And, that's the hard part to compete. And, you also have, don't want to compete against WWE. I don't want to compete against TNA, Ring of Honor, any other indie. I want us all to strive. And, you think about it once, Toronto was its own territory. So was Montreal. So was Calgary. And that's what I want. I want everyone to be able to work and succeed. And that's kind of my mission I've been on. And it's been working really well for me. And I'm going to keep on plugging away. I've always said until I start losing money on the show, I won't do it anymore. But now I've, kind of take it to the next level. And Toronto shows a lot of good stuff going to happen. I want to say 4 surprises, and hoping for some major announcements as well.
Good to hear, man. Another promotion I wanted to bring up with it being around the Toronto area and a promotion I attend regularly is Alpha One, because you've been in the promotion a couple of times, and I want to bring up a certain match as you took on the Hacker Scotty O'Shea last year in an Extreme Rules match.
Yeah, big fan of Hacker. He'll be at my show. It was funny. I had Ethan Page, I wanted Psycho Mike, and I wanted Josh Alexander all at the show. I wanted them all to compete on the show, and every House of Hardcore, Ethan Page has always hit me up and be like, hey, I'm available. And I'm like, there's a time. I come to Toronto, I tell them I want these guys, and like, well, Psycho Mike's hurt, and Josh Alexander's hurt / now he's retired. So I was like, you son of a bitch. The first time when I wanted all four of you. But yeah, man, they're a great organization, and what I tell most of those guys, the fans believe in them. And there was a company that was just based out of Philadelphia that the fans believed in us, and we kind of blew up. And there are some amazing talents, and I've seen some crazy matches there. But yeah, no, Hacker, I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of all those guys and girls, man. I've seen some of the girls go out there and kill each other. Everyone works hard for that company, and I like it. And that's what this business is about.
Absolutely. I got to ask you about your appearance in NXT a little while ago, taking on Baron Corbin, kind of a surprise thing. What's your thoughts on the NXT product?
I love it. It was I watch it. Watch that more intensely. I just watched that the Beast from the East show. I think wrestling fans want to see something called wrestling, God forbid. And, again, like I said, we voiced our displeasure for what we're seeing, and we want to see more wrestling. NXT is a fabulous show. I thought Dusty Rhodes did a hell of a job with all those stars down there, and, the developmental system is going great. That show, those two shows that I wrestled on, I said was the most fun since I had from my own House of Hardcore shows and the original ECW. And it was amazing, and really, really enjoyed it. They have some amazing talents, and I hope they all don't get called up too soon, because then that could hurt the NXT brand. And but I've used so many of the people that are in NXT. I've helped hire some people in NXT, but they're out there and they have the ability to go out there and work their asses off. And that doesn't exclude the women, because they've main evented, rightfully so, a lot of their shows. Sasha Banks, Charlotte can main event any show that I would ever put on. They're phenomenal. And, that I hope that brand continues with their success as well, because it's cool to watch. And again, when people get hired, people get fired. It's that cycle, and I would pick up half the people that are on part of the NXT roster, because they're great.
I couldn't agree with you more. NXT has really put women's wrestling on a pedestal. One of those guys I wanted to ask you about that you've worked with actually in the past with House of Hardcore is the current, or I should say the former NXT champion and maybe the next United States champion, Kevin Owens. What's your thoughts on what they've been doing with them so far?
Couldn't be happier for him. I wrestled him. First time I wrestled him, first time I met him, I was like, this kid doesn't look like much. And I saw a few of his interviews. I was like, man, this guy's got a chip on his shoulder. Okay. We went out there and we had a great match. And I told him I have certain deals with certain people. Young Bucks were, hey, any shows that I have, consider yourself booked, unless you're booked elsewhere. Same deal I had with Kevin. And he is one of those guys who knows who he is. It was kind of ironic. A long time ago, I had a talk with Dusty Rhodes about the polka dots, and him and I were talking, and I was kind of almost talking to him about myself, and because WWE's version of Tommy Dreamer wasn't the ECW or myself, and Dusty told me no one could tell you how to be Tommy Dreamer. And if they do, they're wrong. And it's because you know how to be you. And Kevin Owens, I always would tell him that. You know how to be you and just be yourself. And that's what he's been, and that's why he's been so successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more there with you. Let's jump into some TNA and Global Force Wrestling talk. That's been a big, big situation in professional wrestling right now. What's your thoughts on the whole thing going on?
I was there. I also work and help out in TNA in the back as an agent / talent. I'm kind of all over the place. But, again, that's what I want to do. I want to help continue and help the business. That's been great to me. When Jeff came in, I was as shocked as everyone. Don't know where it's going. If Jeff's Global Force takes off, great. If TNA don't know what's going on, the only information you could get is, really from the internet. But I do know that there's also a lot of things as being in the office, you can't really talk about, as well as, that crew. When you talk about a roster of men and women, they're sometimes working 2 to 3 times a day and don't get enough credit for being the hardest working roster I've ever seen. And I couldn't do what they do and go out there. You'd like Kurt Angle, who's older than me. He went out and had an amazing match at Rockstar Spud, and then he had an amazing match with Austin Aries, all in the same show. Same with, the Wolves. The Wolves will work the Dirty Heels twice in one day. They had a marathon match, 30 minutes, and it was unbelievable. So, hopefully everything works out with TNA. I, again, don't know about Global Force. If they're sharing talent, cool, whatever. The more places to work, the better. If they're just going in and shooting a pilot, hey, let's hope somebody picks it up. And if nobody picks it up, then it was at least had people talking about wrestling.
Between EV 2.0 and Dixie Carter giving you a chance to kind of say farewell to ECW for good with the Hardcore Justice show, with her going through a table and, like you talked about, being an agent and being a backstage talent in TNA, how's it been like being back in TNA compared to the WWE, and what is the difference between the backstage atmospheres?
You have a lot of creative freedom. You have the ability to voice your opinion. So that is cool. I don't think a lot of guys who come from TNA understand how cool that is, because in WWE there's very little. And, it's even working behind the scenes when they're shooting so many shows in a row, you don't know, I got to get where are we at? But it's, if you go back, I want to kind of call myself a Nostradamus and watch the angle that really was an angle. It started from House of Hardcore, and it really boosted the ratings. It was actually one of the highest summer ratings of all time when they were on Spike. And the trigger was when I first went if you go back and listen to my speech to Dixie Carter, I was trying to shake some sense into her and tell her, hey, if you don't make these changes, this stuff could happen to your company. And if you go back and, I don't want to be a bearer of bad news, but it's, hey, you should have listened then. She wound up going through a table. I have nothing but respect for her for what she did. She's not trained to be a wrestler, and she got hurt. She took it like a champ, and, she also went off of television. So, and if it's your company, and everyone seems to have an opinion, it's technically your company. You can do whatever the hell you want with it. And you removed yourself from television, and, that says a lot as well. So, and people want to bitch and moan about TNA and the TNA's shows. Some of their shows, I just watched last night's show. It was a great wrestling show. It truly was. And you may not agree with some of the storylines, but if you look past some of the stuff and get rid of some of the negative, you will see some great wrestling.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with you there. I think right now TNA is putting on one of the best wrestling products out there. I think one of the problems fans have, though, is the fact that it's a tape product. Do you feel like that hurts the TNA Impact Wrestling product?
Yeah, but that's also cost efficient. You really, that, again, promoter, you want me to do a live show, I got to go get a truck, and I got to get a truck to broadcast that stuff live and a truck alone costs in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Good trucks cost about $300,000. And that's, you're doing a podcast. You could do a podcast calling Tommy Dreamer on his phone and recording it from wherever you're recording it, or you want to go to a studio and cost yourself some more money.
Yeah. That's a very, very good point.
Fans don't always see both sides. And I get it, and I get your frustration because I've lived it too. But always remember, there are always two sides to every story, and don't always be such a naysayer, because I was around when the business was booming, and I was around when the business kind of went blah. And when the business went blah, it was blah for everyone, the fans as well.
I agree with you. And speaking of that, I got to ask you, what has it been like being through all the transitions pretty much in professional wrestling, from the Attitude Era to that little down period to now where it seems like everything in wrestling is booming again?
It's great. It's definitely a boom. And I left WWE because I was not happy. And for anyone, you cannot put a price on your own happiness in any job that you have. If you're unhappy, if you're working at McDonald's, quit McDonald's and go see if Burger King will hire. So there is life after wrestling, and, there's also, if you feel there's no life after wrestling, or in wrestling it's a little different because there's something called age, and that catches up with you. But, you can still go out there and do all stuff. And then I have no problem ever getting a real job in my life. That's just the kind of person I am. My mom is 75 years old, doesn't need to work. She goes to work every day. It keeps her active. It keeps her talking to people. It keeps her being crazy and bothering me, because all moms are always crazy and bothering their children. But that's the type of person I am, and that's to me being a responsible human being. You cannot live forever. You watch the TV show, which is phenomenal. I don't know if you guys get it up in Canada, Rock's Ballers. It's a great show.
No, we don't.
Well, you guys need to get it on HBO. Do you guys even have HBO up there?
I don't think so.
What the hell is going on in Canada, eh?
Yeah, our igloos and polar bears.
Well, it's a fabulous show. Go look it up. It's got to be online somewhere. Fight Net, pick it up. I'll hook you up with The Rock. We're good boys. We used to travel together.
Something I think you're known notoriously for in professional wrestling is feuds. Do you feel like that's a thing missing in professional wrestling?
Is what?
Feuds.
Feuds? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I lost you for a second.
Let's try that again. Something I think you're known notoriously for in professional wrestling is feuds. Talk a little bit about feuds, and do you think that's something missing from the business?
Yes. I was 100%. Wrestling feuds, I think as a wrestling fan in their 40s can talk about, the Four Horsemen and Dusty Rhodes, can talk about Kevin Sullivan and Dusty Rhodes, can talk about Carlos Colon and Abdul the Butcher, can talk about the Freebirds and the Von Erichs. You can rattle off feuds, Hogan and Savage, and you could think of moments of where you were, what happened, all that stuff. Nowadays, because of how everything happens so fast, and, when people try to talk about feuds, it doesn't happen. If they start talking about Randy Orton versus John Cena, people are like, oh, please, not anymore. Well, why not? If there were two guys who kind of came up at the same time, kind of paid their dues throughout the company, but that's sometimes some of the negative stuff. But yes, I think feuds go away because we forget about them, and unfortunately, the way wrestling at times programs you to think they want you to forget about stuff because they don't think you should process it, but you should process everything.
I don't think it happens as much anymore, but back in the day where companies would try to use the ECW lineage to get over, how did that make you feel?
I personally feel that, if it wasn't myself or Paul Heyman being a part of the shows, it wasn't authentic. But like I said, with me, after TNA's Hardcore Justice, I said that was the last one for me, that I would ever do anything ECW reunion-esque. And it was. Last time I ever wrestled Raven, people ask me, all the time, in indies, will you wrestle Raven? Nope. You know why? Because I told the fans I wouldn't, and that's, to me, how I get to keep my word.
Now, something to me in professional wrestling that's really surreal is being in a video game. You got to do it many of times. How's that feeling for you?
That was awesome. I was a huge gamer. I helped put together the original ECW game. I was very, very hands-on with that. And then taking it to the next level, going to WWE is really, really cool. And then when you used to get the really, really cool paycheck from it, was even better. Because we didn't get those things called paychecks in the original ECW, but WWE, they made up for it.
And I got to ask, with you being the current IWC Heavyweight Champion, just recently dropping the 2CW Heavyweight title, how does it feel to still be able to go with a lot of the independent talents today?
Like I said, number one, every independent show I work, I look at guys, I watch guys' matches, and, I want to see where the future is going, and I want to see where the future is with, some guys. First time I met him was on an independent show, Dalton Castle. I think Dalton Castle is going to be the next biggest star in professional wrestling. He's now signed with Ring of Honor. He's phenomenal. Same with, I saw the Young Bucks first wrestle on a Chikara show, and I was like, wow, these guys put on one of the best tag team matches I've ever seen. And, somebody like, kid lived in my own neighborhood, Eddie Kingston, from Yonkers, and then I went out there and watched him work, and I was like, wow, this guy's a throwback. Got a Japanese style, but even in your face, like throwback old school wrestling. And, I love going out there and performing, as well as seeing some really, really good talent. And there's a lot, like I said, from a lot of different federations. No one can sign guys or they're exclusive. But there's a lot of really, really good talent out there, and the wrestling fans have spoken, because the best part about my life now is I get to see my life's work come to fruition, because I get to sit and talk to the fans before shows, after shows, or at intermission, when you're out there selling your pictures and T-shirts, or just sitting there talking to fans. And I also get to watch some of the matches. But fans tell me, oh man, I stopped watching wrestling when this happened or that happened, but I've now refound it on independent wrestling, or found it with, House of Hardcore. And I love hearing all that stuff, because, it's to me, if you're a fan of baseball, you're a fan of football, you should be forever. And if you got turned off for something, that's okay. I know for me, I was a huge hockey fan. I got turned off because of the second strike. I stood by you for the first strike, but not by the second strike. But I would still go out there and watch hockey. And hockey playoffs, I watched every hockey playoff game. I don't have as much team loyalty. I'm a huge Rangers fan, because I was grown up at one. But hockey lost me and lost my. But if there's a hockey game on, I'll watch it. Just like if there's a basketball playoff game, I'd watch it. I watch every baseball game. I watch every football game. I'm a sports fan. But wrestling fans have, at certain times, got turned off. And to me, best part about wrestling is it could change. And now you have several options, and sit there and choose something.
Yep, I agree with you. One more independent wrestling memory I want to bring up before we close out the interview, and that's Mark Sherman and Chaotic Wrestling. Talk a little bit about your interactions with him.
How in the world, and why would someone based out of Toronto talk about Mark Sherman? Has he ever been to Canada to even be allowed in your country?
I don't think so.
So how do you know about him?
I know about Chaotic Wrestling. I'm a big fan of independent wrestling, and Team Friendship is something that has popped up.
Sherman is a good kid. He's a huge ECW fan. He's actually quite the character. And he was a huge Tommy Dreamer fan. So I've now seen him on Twitter, and like he kind of like stalks like people, and then he takes pictures with like Kevin Nash, like, I grew up watching you in your childhood. You were one of my favorites. Same shit he said to me. So, you know, I don't know if he's as genuine an ECW fan as he claims he was. But no, man, I like Sherman. He's a good kid. He's crazy, but in a good way.
Tommy, it's been an honor and a pleasure to get to interview you. You're somebody that I did grow up watching, and it's something that I really look forward to when I found out the news, and I really thank you for this time. Throw out some plugs for House of Hardcore a little bit more, talk a little bit about the Fight Network, talk a little bit about the show next weekend at the Ted Reeve Arena.
No problem. Don't tell me what to do. You're still a young kid. I'll whoop your ass in Kenya on Saturday, July 18th at the Reeve Center. How about that?
Give me a Singapore game, one more shot.
Keep supporting independent wrestling. I like hearing that. And, Matt, you know, the show, we had our last episode is next Tuesday. Sad day. But there's hopefully other things on the horizon. Again, I used to play a wrestling rolling of the dice game. It was called Superstars of Wrestling. And it was a dice game where I used to play with my G.I. Joes and my Star Wars figures. And I went from that to being able to hop the guardrail and become a wrestler. And then now on the opposite side, going back to rolling the dice and being my own fantasy booker, except it cost me a lot more money. I look forward to entertaining in front of our largest pre-sale that I've ever had. And, you know, I can't wait for the event. HouseOfHardcore.net is where you get all the news. I update my Twitter, which is The Tommy Dreamer, my Instagram, The Tommy Dreamer, and my Facebook, The Tommy Dreamer. And the best part about wrestling today is you could actually talk to the people that, you know, you like. I answer most of fans' questions, and, you know, hit me up and follow all the information from HouseOfHardcore.net, House of Hardcore on Instagram, and House of Hardcore on Facebook, as well as my stuff. My stuff usually goes out there first because I don't update the other stuff other people.
You have Tommy Dreamer versus Chris Hero. You've got the Young Bucks versus the Dudley Boys. You've got the Addiction versus the Kingdom. You got John Morrison versus Tony Nese. You've got Rhino's Open Challenge. You got Tracy Brooks' farewell to professional wrestling, and so much more going down at House of Hardcore next weekend, July the 18th, live in Toronto at the Ted Reeve Arena. Tommy, it was an honor and a pleasure, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, bud. Talk to you later.